Hello, I'm a guy that likes to talk about music, and today I want to talk about a Grateful Dead song, Uncle John's Band. Come here, Uncle John's Band by the riverside. Yeah, it was released in 1970. It was on the Working Man's Dead album, along with Casey Jones, which I was talking about before. And it's a folk rock song. It's a song that I could, easily picture a couple of people playing on a street corner somewhere. You have two people on acoustic guitars, one playing lead, one playing rhythm, and maybe, if possible, you'd have a third friend in the back, playing the little bongo drums, the little ones that people would play on their lap when they're sitting Indian style, and it wouldn't have to be men either. It could be a couple of women too, like I've heard the Indigo Girls do this song. Uh, anyway, I was thinking about this song because it was one of the first Grateful Dead songs that I had heard. There was a radio station that I used to listen to back in high school, and it was a classic rock station, 98.3 KFMZ, the home of rock and roll. And something they used to do was on some weekends, they'd have their rock block weekends. And what a rock block was they'd play three songs in a row by the same artist, and it was a really neat thing for a young person like me who was getting interested in classic rock, and it was a good way to discover all these new bands that I wasn't familiar with. Well, not new bands, old bands, but new to me. And so, this was the way to become familiar with these bands, Zeppelin, The Who, and Pink Floyd, and Rush, and Clapton, etc. And it helped me discover, what bands I'd like to hear more from, and who these bands were, and what bands that I could spend my limited funds on if I wanted to buy some tapes. And the Grateful Dead was one of those bands. And also, I had a blank tape in my little radio slash tape player, and so when the DJ said coming up a rock block from so and so, I could get ready, to record if it was one of those artists that I was curious about. And so I managed to record three songs from the Grateful Dead. It was the DJ played Truckin', Touch of Grey, and then Uncle John's Band. Now, of course, Truckin' was a good song, and Touch of Grey, I actually knew that one already because, that one was, it was played on the top 40 station when it came out, and they played that one on Friday night videos. And of course, so I discovered Uncle John's Band, and I actually liked it. But you see, not only did I get into classic rock from the 60s and 70s, I had also somehow gotten really into folk rock, Dylan and Simon and Garfunkel, Arlo Guthrie, Crosby, Stills and Nash, etc. Yeah, I had discovered Crosby, Stills and Nash and really liked them. I had their two tapes, and I think that's what Uncle John's Band reminded me of. It sounded very similar to CSN, and I would find out one day that there was good reason for that. It's because members of the Grateful Dead and purposely wanted to do some things like what CSN did. They wanted to do some acoustic stuff with the vocal harmonies. Yeah, CSN was actually quite influential at the time. A lot of singers and musicians liked what CSN did and wanted to do some stuff that was similar to what they were doing, including the Eagles and Zeppelin. Plus, members of the Grateful Dead and CSN were friends. They hung out with each other. They hung out in the studio together and played together, etc. So yeah, it was no wonder that song reminded me of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. I had read that the music, though, for Uncle John's Band was based on some old European folk songs, some folk music. Jerry Garcia had been listening to some folk music from Bulgaria and Greece, I think, if I remember correctly. It was some stuff from Bulgaria and Greece. And there was one song in particular that he really liked that he based the melody for this song on. And he even said once that he stole it, which that's pretty cool for him to admit that, be honest about it. But, you also got to question, hey, can you really steal a folk music? Can you really steal a folk tune? I don't know. And the lyrics were co-written by Rob, was that his name? Hunter. Robert Hunter? Yeah, Robert Hunter. Yeah, he was like the unofficial member of the band. He was a poet and writer who he co-wrote some Grateful Dead songs, including some of their most popular and well-known songs. Yeah, I guess you could say Hunter was like he was like Jerry Garcia's own Topin, however you pronounce his name. You know what I mean. So what's the song about? Nobody knows, really, I don't think. Nobody really knows. There are theories out there, like, some say Uncle John was meant to be Jerry Garcia himself. So why was it called Uncle John instead of Uncle Jerry? I don't know. And some say Uncle John was, he was meant to be a symbol of the whole 60s spirit. Okay, I like that idea, but who knows? Maybe it was more literal. Maybe someone really did have an Uncle John, and their Uncle John had a band, and that band was pretty good. So yeah, I used to have a friend who had an Uncle John, and he had a band, but that band was actually pretty bad. I would not want to go listen to them, not at a Riverside or any other place for that matter. But anyway, I had some things that I wanted to point out about this song, about the lyrics, but I'll have to do that some other time because I got a real job I need to get to. Well, the first days are the